Hi, I'm Ashley Cooley, a birth, baby, and sleep specialist and mom of 3. There's so much information out there, right? This show is dedicated to helping you clear out the noise so you can figure out what will work best for your baby and your family. Having worked with countless families over the years, including my own, the information and strategies I'll share are based on these experiences, my extensive training, and we're even going to back it all up with some science. My goal is to help you make informed decisions, and we're here to break down what it takes to raise well-adjusted, securely attached, and happy babies. If you're looking to learn more about your baby, gain more confidence in your parenting, and get as much sleep as you can through it all, you've come to the right place. Bringing up baby is about to get a little easier. Hi everyone, welcome to season 2 of the Bringing Up Baby podcast. I'm so happy to be back on a more regular basis after taking some time to enjoy some family visits and camping trips. But today we are chatting yet again with Maria Radelich and Shannon Platt of Pelvico Fitness and Rehabilitation. The Pelvico ladies and I first got together at the end of last season's episodes, and those conversations were really geared towards exercise during pregnancy and things you may want to do and not want to do with your pelvic floor muscles that can help you prepare for your upcoming labor and delivery. That conversation also happened to have happened while Shannon was 9 months pregnant. And now here we are again, a couple months later and one baby later. So for this episode, we're focused on the postpartum period, specifically the process of your body and your pelvic floor kind of regrouping after labor and how to properly ease back into movement and exercise, which as we know has plenty of benefits. You're in for a treat with this episode because whenever I get together with these ladies, at least so far, our conversations tend to really go there. So get ready for a raw and honest conversation on birth, your pelvic floor, and the postpartum period. So let's start first with, again, congratulating Shannon on bringing this beautiful little human into the world. And now that you've been able to sort of digest this new little life and have started navigating life as a family of 4, how are you and how have you been feeling through this postpartum period?
Yes, well, thank you. We're actually staring at him right now, having a little snooze. So this is perfect timing. So I am doing well, and I mean, I guess it's almost 7 weeks postpartum now with Cole, and it's been a bit of a whirlwind. I mean, it has gone by really fast. I find second time around, it's been a little bit easier on the head in some ways because you just kind of know what you're in for versus the first time around where it's all completely brand new. And especially on the sleep side of things, I find, I mean, I think I look back on Sloan with rose glass colored glasses, whatever that term is, because you only kind of remember the good things. But I think she was a pretty good sleeper right off the bat, where that's been a little more challenging with Cole right off the bat. But it's like, but again, I'm like, this isn't forever. I know that this is only a period of time, and that's easier to digest this time around, where last time it was like, oh my God, I'm never gonna sleep again. So so I find that's all easier. Now, having a toddler at home is a complete change this time around. So that's busier. And I think if you were to ask my husband what has been, I think he'd find it a bit harder this time around because he has to really be with our toddler a lot more. And I'm with baby. So that's been tough because I miss a little bit of my time with her, but it's slowly seemingly to come, it's starting to come back where I'm getting some more one-on-one time with her. So overall, it's been it's been good, definitely all around. We're really happy to have Cole here. Baby sister loves him, maybe a little too much, with some pokes and big hugs and big squeezes.
Nice. So it sounds like overall, like the bigger picture, you're able to see the bigger picture of it all, and knowing that the sleep is hard right now and the juggling of more than one child is hard right now, but you can see kind of that light a little bit easier, right?
Completely. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. I also want to hear more about your delivery and that very fresh postpartum period and how that all went for you, because I know you had plans, you were working on things differently. We kind of touched on that a little bit in the first episode with you guys a few months ago, planning and preparing your pelvic floor and doing that kind of stuff. But why don't you give us a little synopsis about how things went for you?
Yeah, for sure. I'm actually excited to, because it was a completely different experience from my first, as you know, every birth experience is, and we always hear that. But I do want to first off say too that, you know, my sharing a bit of my birth experience today, like, isn't meant to make any mom feel less than or more than with their own birth experience, because we do have such, you know, it's completely different from my first to my second, and yours and yours and yours will be all different from mine. So but I do love sharing it because I think it's important, to share our birth stories. And I think it brings us together as women and just empowers us a little bit more. And knowledge, you know, is power too. So, yeah, so into the experience. So basically this time around, I was 4 days overdue. And I ended up opting for a sweep. I hadn't really felt the need to have one up until that point. That was on a Monday morning, and Tuesday afternoon, I started feeling my contractions. And
I freaking knew she was in labor too. She literally always texts me back, and I said, "Oh boy, she's in labor." I was
amazing.
Like, I knew it.
The pelvic floor physio has this like internal
spidey senses.
Her pelvic floor is reacting. I can sense it.
Exactly.
From a mile away.
She's doing it.
Yeah. That's hilarious. So I went and so, you know, I started feeling contractions at 5:30. By 9:30, I was like, okay, it's time, because I had in my head, my doctor was like, make sure you go in early this time because it's your second, it could happen faster. And my first baby, it was a long labor, but quick pushing. So anyway, I went in and I was only a centimeter. So I was like, oh, okay. Got turned away, came back a few hours later because they were 3 to 5 minutes apart and really intense. And I was 4 centimeters. And so I got admitted. And so, one of the biggest things that sticks out to me is how amazing the nurses at the IWK, which is where we delivered in Halifax, were from the moment we arrived to the very end. And when the admitting nurse asked, you know, for pain management, what would you like to do? And so my plan this time around was to try and do it unmedicated. And that's what I told her. And she was just completely supportive and on board and just so encouraging, saying things like, your labor is going to go quicker, your recovery will be better. Like, whether these things were true or not, I just hearing that reinforcement and positive reinforcement was like exactly what I needed, right? You know, getting into it before I even started like the hard part. So so that was great. Then I got admitted to the birth unit, and I probably labored for about 5 hours up there. And again, we had another nurse, and she was fantastic and just like let me make the decisions. Like my first labor, I really felt like everything was out of my control, and I was not making any decisions or calling any of the shots. But this time around, the nurse would ask me, for example, like, would you like the IV, the hep block? And I was like, well, if I have the option not to, I'd rather not, because I wanted to be more active in my labor. Last time when I had it in, it was really uncomfortable and I felt like I couldn't even move my hand at all. So she just, when she needed to take my blood, which only happened once or twice, she just did, the normal way and in my vein, in my arm.
Mm-hmm.
So that was great. Another thing too was, I was hooked up to a monitor, heart rate monitor last time to monitor the baby's heart rate, but they just used the Doppler this time so that again, I was active and I could move around. And like probably 3 or 4 big things that really helped me in this labor were, one, having gone through a birth before, like that just,
absolutely.
You get a little one up.
You get totally.
Yeah.
Number 2 was Pelvico and Maria. Like, we actually put on some Pelvico, we call them Pelvico uncensored webinars, but they're birth and labor prep. and we put those on while I was pregnant. So it was a great just reminders and reinforcers of pain management and of things that my partner could do. So those, and I actually, we had those recorded. So I did a night or two with Tim, my partner, he reviewed them, and we went over some of the, hip squeezing and pressing down on my sacrum. So that was really helpful. And then I guess the last one would be, I read, this book called Active Birth by, I think I have it written down here, Janet Labascas, I think is her name. Anyway, and that just reinforced a lot of things that Maria and I actually talk about in our Pelvico Uncensored webinars, and then also just gave some other kind of active positions you can do during your labor. So those were really, really helpful. And literally in labor, so like for the 5 hours or whatever it was, Tim, for every contraction, he was there to squeeze my hips or press on my sacrum. And I
told Tim, Tim, working out, honey. I told him at like 5 months, I said, you better start working on those biceps.
He was tired, and I wasn't thinking about him at all. I'm like, you get like, I wasn't talking a whole lot. So I'd be like, hips, tailbone, water. Like he was like, after the fact, when we talked about it, he was like, I felt like your cut man in a boxing ring. Like it was just like, he'd come with the face cloth and dab me on the face. And then he'd be up on the bed, like squeezing my hip. And he did that for 5 hours, like every contraction basically. And then like, it wasn't until a few weeks later, he was like, oh yeah, I was exhausted. I'm like, well, I'm glad you didn't tell me that in the moment.
That's amazing. The practicing those positions, which what I do in prenatal class as well, is huge. And I'm always telling families to practice, because you don't want to be in teaching mode when you're in labor. You just want them to go and do. So that's amazing that having had the experience before absolutely changes things. And doing that practice and being prepared as much as possible. It sounds like it really made like a huge shift in how you were able to respond and work with your labor this time.
It did. Exactly. It just felt like, we were, and it felt like Tim and I were working together, and I was just, and even again, back to the nurses being so fantastic. Every time she checked the heart rate, she'd be like, baby's happy. And it was like those words that she was using that I was like, that's all I need to know. Like that's what kind of kept me going through it.
Things those words you didn't know you needed, but were still very reassuring and comforting. So it just adds to you feeling relaxed, which is really important.
Totally. So all that being said, by the end, I was about 9 centimeters and my water hadn't broken. So the doctor came in and broke my water, and then things intensified. And within about half hour, baby was born. And the pushing was crazy. Like that's where the pelvico endurance cardio came into play. Like I was thinking during those moments, if I didn't feel like as like healthy and fit coming into this as I felt, it would be a lot more challenging to get through like an active labor or just, labor and pushing. And like, that was like one of the physically most demanding things I've ever done.
And Shan's done like triathlons, just saying.
Yeah.
Well, they often refer to labor as, marathons. Totally. And it's more like an ultra marathon in some cases where people are, go a day or two. But like, I do have to say, like some of that training, whatever you're doing in your pregnancy, and if you're doing some training or cardiovascular work, like it is for a reason. It can come back to really help you out. So, 20 or 30 minutes of pushing, and I felt like I had to poo. I didn't feel like I was ready to push out a baby, but they were telling me like, you got to push, and like they were telling me I was ready. And
so you wouldn't have had that feeling with your first labor because of, I think you had an epidural, perhaps.
Yes. Good question. So I had the epidural the first time, so I didn't have that. I kind of felt the need to poo, or like something was coming out the first time. Pressure. And then it happened so quickly that I thought it would be the same this time, where I'd be like, oh, I'm going to push this baby out in 2 or 3 pushes, but that wasn't the case. Like I just, this time around, it was just like, oh, it just feels like a poo. And I'm like, and I really got to the point where I was like, I don't think I can push this guy out. Like, I don't, like, I'm going to have to use everything in my power to get him out.
Mhm.
And I was so tired by that point that I was like, well, I don't want this to go on that much longer. And like, I think I knew deep down I would be able to get him out, but I had to use everything I had. And they were telling me I had a new nurse came in right as I was transitioning. So that was a bit tough because I developed this relationship with the other nurse. And but she was holding one leg, Tim was on the other, and she was telling me to like bear down, and like here comes Pelvico and Maria in the back, and me not wanting to tear my pelvic floor apart, or my perineum. I
think that's a hard word too in our world, because like bear down isn't bad, but we kind of like stigmatize the word.
Right.
Like, I think that's one thing that like made me realize with Shannon's experience when we talk about pelvico and like bearing down, that like bearing down isn't bad. It's that when we create so much pressure like from above, it can almost, that's what the problem is, right? Or like more of the issue is for some people when we're talking about that open glottis, is that you're still doing the same motion to push the baby down, you're just breathing differently. And so I think that's something that like I realized, maybe to make sure we're not stigmatizing the word bear down, because it's not wrong. It's actually really what you're supposed to do, really.
Whether you're breathing through it or holding your breath. Yes, you're bearing down.
And so I think that word sounds very scary to people, because a lot of people hear like, don't do that. But actually that is what you're doing. You're just breathing different ways.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And that's kind of, again, that like kind of scared me in the moment, but I was trying to do some open glottis breathing, more of like, and then I was doing the hybrid approach. And anyway, by the time, I still did the hybrid by the time he came out, where I was breathing through and then basically bearing down. And that's what really helped me get him out. And luckily I came out pretty unscathed, like didn't have to have any stitches. And I was shocked. Like I was actually absolutely shocked, because when this time without having the drugs, you could feel everything. And I was just like, oh yeah, I'm done.
I'm done. But you know what?
I was like, I have the tools to repair, so it's okay. Like I was also
I'm done, but we'll get repaired. But it is with that feeling, that's part of, not to say that having an epidural or anything is going to lead to tearing or anything, but when you have the feeling, you usually get a bit more control with your pushing, and that can help with less tearing or no tearing. I want to step aside. It's not really off topic, but it kind of is. I want to talk about poop for a second.
Yeah, love talking about poop.
Our favorite topic.
Particularly with the pelvic floor. So Maria, would you say that like, if somebody is like constipated, if they do, or if they're at the toilet, they need to take a big poo, is it recommended or not to actually push through it? Like, what are you supposed to do if you're having a hard time having a poo? This is going to be a new topic in our, what do you say to that?
It's so kind of like the same sort of concept when it comes to like pushing out a baby that we talk about, that if you're thinking about holding your breath and creating a ton of pressure from above to try and like push your stool out or push your poop out, that can create too much pressure that we don't really need. And to be honest, and like, obviously I get to see this in clinic. If I put my finger in someone's rectum and I ask them to bear down, like you're having a really hard poop, what I actually find is I get a squeeze around my finger, which we don't want. We want that to actually come out, which is why that same, when we talk about labor, prep, and delivery, why we kind of step away a little bit from that closed glottis all the time, because a lot of people's initial reaction actually is to contract up. And if you think about it, like, I don't know about you, but I want my rectum to be open so I can actually get it out. So what we would recommend if you're having like hard time pooping throughout pregnancy, postpartum, etc., and this is what I talk about, we talk about in our webinars, I talk about every day in clinic, instead of actually thinking about like pushing down and like bearing down, I actually get them to blow into a closed fist. So really create like a tight seal around your fist and just give you a big blow where your cheeks would actually fill up with air. And what that can do is it can actually create a good amount of back pressure, because we need some pressure to get poop out, but it doesn't create that spasmodic type contraction around the rectum. So we're kind of battling this side of, okay, we're pushing, but we're also relaxing. And so that actually kind of is a really good way to like
I literally
labor and delivery.
I literally do that when I'm on the toilet having issues, because I get constipated.
And she does get constipated a lot.
Like I get constipated a lot and always have. I use the fist thing that has stuck with me, and it helps. It actually works.
Yeah.
Nice.
So
And
you don't want to
squatty
like
potty.
bear down, like in terms of like using all your might and holding your breath. We actually would expect you to be breathing throughout that. And really that filling, when you take that nice inhale, actually is what can create a lot of really great pressure to help bring your pelvic floor and stool down. So really blowing through that closed fist, proper toileting mechanics, get a squatty potty. Those are the best things that you can do if you do have constipation, and really avoid that bearing down, because then we're running into trouble like possible, aggravation of things like prolapse, etc. And we don't want to have that before any, deliveries or anything.
Yeah. Well, and so this is why I bring it up, because most people wouldn't know that, right?
Right.
If you're having a hard time, you're just like, okay, I gotta
get
bear
this
down, or I gotta,
Totally.
And so you're creating more tension. And I think what you mean, and correct me if I'm wrong, but when you're saying like that tension or that pressure up here, it's like it's coming out your face, it's coming in your
like
jaw,
your eyeballs are gonna like fall out of your head.
Yeah. And that's too much up here, where if you can breathe through it and still push down, that's going to create that opening. Exactly. So that's exactly. And when you were talking about Shannon, when it was coming time to push, and that part, you were feeling that pressure, feeling the need to poo. As you know, both we didn't talk a lot of detail about it. Maybe we will later, but I was part of someone's birth experience a few weeks ago, and seeing it from that point of view and experiencing from that point of view was amazing. I can remember feeling that need to poo, and then when she got that feeling, and it was like, I need to take and we were just yelling, yes, do it, like do it right here, because that's the kind of pushing you want to give.
Exactly.
But having that open glottis pushing that you're referring to is trying to keep that breathing and relaxation up at the top part of yourself.
It's almost like two different like segments. It's like above your belly button, below your belly button. Like you want to actually push it, bear down, but on the upper side, you don't want that much pressure. You want to be able to breathe and function and send all that pressure kind of downward in a way that's going to be useful to you.
Yeah. So, it's good to talk about poops we're
it
talking
really,
labor.
Hey, Shan, how many times did you poop?
I was actually gonna, probably like twice. It wasn't until like the pushing part. Yeah. And I was like, I definitely, and I don't know, I'm like, Tim, I'm so glad I don't get to see this, because
they are so good. They are so good at, you don't notice. They don't even notice. Nobody notices.
Right. Yeah. Really. Yeah. I'd love to be part of someone's birth. So that's really cool that you
you're signed up when it's my turn. We're gonna have like a room full of people.
I was gonna say, sorry, Maria's sisters, but you probably will have all of them.
We'll have the full meal deal.
They'll all be there. Yeah. Awesome. Well, Shannon, I'm so glad it sounds like such a positive experience for you. And I know you were thinking about maybe doing it without medication and stuff leading up to it. So I'm so glad it feels like you got what you were looking for and you had the tools to do that. So that's awesome.
It was very empowering for sure. Like I just felt like I kind of reclaimed my birth experience. I don't know, you just kind of, I didn't look as fondly on my first one as I did on this one, but yes, it was, I felt in control, and for the most part, it was like as good as I could have expected, which I didn't expect.
Nice. And so when we get into more of that postpartum period, and I know like you've been kind of touching on your Instagram stories and stuff, what that recovery and what that has been like in that rehabilitation. And you two actually did a series when Shannon needed to go to her appointment with Maria to see her pelvic floor physiotherapist. That was 5 or 6 weeks postpartum.
It was 5.5 weeks. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And Maria got, you guys got right up in there and really and I love that, because it's like, hey, this is what it's going to be like, and this is what they're checking for, and this is how things are going. So I love that you both did that and were able to share that with your followers.
We were like, we're not sure how this is going to go over, but we were like, you know what? People are so scared of like what pelvic floor looks like, or they just like have no idea. And so I think like bringing down some of the stigma of like, we're joking around, like most of the time I'm literally talking to you about like, what are you going to do this weekend? How's life? Like we just hang out a lot of the times. It's really chill.
Totally.
Yeah. I just got my finger in her rectum and we're talking about dinner tonight.
No big deal, just a little pressure.
Yeah. Well, I hadn't had the rectal exam before, so that was that was new to me, but it was fine.
No one else but Maria could do that to you, I'm sure. No, that's amazing. I really love that. And I'm sure your followers appreciated it too.
We do have it highlighted on our account. If anyone wants to go, we actually highlighted it. So it stick around if you're like,
amazing.
Oh, I need to go watch it again.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yes. Go watch it. Go watch it.
It's through the lens of between my legs that are covered, obviously. Yeah. But while Maria does the exam.
You're like, okay, this is what we're gonna do next, and then it was like stop and cut to okay, so we just how are you feeling? That was amazing. So Shannon, you had a couple of vaginal deliveries, and so I know that with Pelvico, and we're going to talk a bit more about that too, is what about women who have a C-section? Do they need to care about their pelvic floor at all postpartum? If for say, I know certainly if those women were pushing for some time, and maybe that could be a different story as well, but even a planned C-section, I'm curious if there's any kind of postpartum work that you do talk about or they need to consider.
Totally. So from kind of like the pelvic floor perspective, a lot of people are like, so we'll just talk about like a planned C-section as if like nothing happened to your vagina. If we kind of think about our pelvic floor per se during delivery. But the thing is that we're seeing research wise is after a C-section delivery, we're seeing really, really high rates of pain with intercourse. And like incontinence virtually is the same for vaginal delivery versus C-section delivery. So leaking. The only thing that is slightly decreased in terms of possibility is prolapse. So prolapse is the only one that you might get away with a little bit unscathed. However, what a lot of people forget is it's not just about the delivery. There is a whole 9 months of changes that have happened to your body, and a whole, year to year and a half, 2 years that your body has now actually physically changed, and will be continuing to change, and hormonally you're changing, and that can really affect the pelvic floor. So absolutely, a lot of my C-section mamas, depending on like time and like what we're doing, I still will do a vaginal exam to make sure things are going well. And I do see it in clinic that moms come back and they say, oh, you know what, sex really hurts. Or they'll say, I actually am leaking. Like, what the heck? I didn't even do anything there. But really, we have to remember that the pelvic floor and the muscles that have been impacted from a C-section are somewhat continuous when we talk about fascia, and they're also functionally paired. So there are deep core system, and they both get affected regardless of the delivery that you've had. And so, with the C-section, we're definitely seeing high rates of pretty much everything else. And you have to just remember that, you still have gone through 9 months of a whole pregnancy.
It doesn't all come down to delivery.
No.
Cool. Well, that's a really important point to make for sure. Cause I would think if I had a C-section, there would be quote unquote nothing to worry about in the pelvic region, but I guess that's not the case.
Definitely not. And so that's why Pelvico actually has 2 streams for our postpartum programs. We have a vaginal delivery and a C-section delivery. And so in the C-section delivery, the first couple phases are a little bit different just because of course it's a major, delivery, but then they actually continue to work on the pelvic floor almost in the exact same way. So that's kind of, they're definitely different in terms of things we have to think about. However, at the end of the day, we still have to change and rehab both parts of that delivery method and all parts of the core.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. Well, speaking of the Pelvico site and what you guys have available there, what about exercise? I think you guys have some great programs that you recently put up on the site as well. We were talking about it last time, I think, at the On Demand. So I was just wondering if you could tell us a bit more about these, again, how they're designed to help women recover and revive their bodies with movement after baby.
Yeah. So we know that, exercise is really important just in general over a lifespan. But kind of like Shannon said, it's like you have this huge, massive event, and then kind of after where you might be less, active, especially with baby, and you need to be because of recovery. So what we created were programs that were very specific to integrating that deep core system and then building out from there. So getting back to the things like squats and lunges and functional activities that you're doing every day as a mom anyway. And then from there, our goal is really to help you get back into the exercise that you like to do. So are you a runner? Do you want to go back into running, and really giving you the steps? Because unfortunately, and I know we've talked about this a lot, but I will never stop reiterating it, the 6-week mark is not the okay to go running. It's not. We know that minimum we're looking at 12 weeks now. And that is like probably a Shannon where she had a pretty reasonable delivery. And even still with Shannon, I'm going to run her through all of the return to run protocols before I'll even give her the remote okay to even start a walk to run program. So there's things like that we have to recognize that, medically, yes, you look good at 6 weeks. So your doctor's like, I'm done with ESC. But when we look at, the functional side of things and how things really progress, it's not okay to go from 0 to 100. And we really have to kind of keep progressing and showing people like how to actually get there. And that's what we did. We just created programs that really you can start. When did you start? 2 weeks?
I started at 2 weeks postpartum.
Yeah. But you could start, they're designed to start as early as you want to.
If you wanted.
But then take you all the way to build you up to that point that you're going to go back to more specifics in terms of what you want to go into.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Again, so many things that we don't really think about. And you go to your 6-week postpartum checkup and everything's looking and feeling fine. So we think, okay, I guess I'm back to normal now. I guess it's time to get out there and do what I used to do. Nothing changes, but that shouldn't be the case. It's not the case. So it's really good to get these other perspectives, other health professionals that are, and you study this, you research this, like this is your area. And I mean, pelvic floor, we don't want to mess around with that.
No. Exactly. And like there's, even beyond the pelvic floor, when it comes to women's health, if you're breastfeeding, your bone density actually decreases. So you're at a really high risk of things like stress fracture. If you're going back to things like high impact activity, we really have to monitor that. You're also at increased risk of injury just in general, because your body is still changing past the 6-week mark. So there's even just beyond just straight pelvic floor and deep core, we're looking at significant injury rates higher than that or different than that. And so, just looking at women's health from a greater perspective. And I think that's also why in our program, we also created an academy where we add tidbits. We talk about, what's normal, what's not normal, what can you expect, what's not to be expected, so that, when something doesn't go quite right, you have a resource to say, okay, no, I do need to go get this looked at.
And also too, it's sleep, right? If you're not sleeping or you're giving up sleep to go for a run or get your exercise in, is it worth it? Right. And those are certain questions that we, like to reiterate to ask yourself. And like, I know for me, and it's the long game here. I want to be healthy and be able to move my body in the way I want to do it for the long term. So, why rush it at 6 weeks, at 7 weeks, if you're not really ready?
Absolutely. Because we don't want to cause more problems or other problems down the road. So take your time.
And it's more frustrating down the road where you feel like, oh, I'm 9 months, 12 months, 2 years postpartum, I should be fine. And
I'll be honest, people do go back to exercise at 6-8 weeks. They're running and they feel good. There's no problem. They're not leaking. They're not doing anything. It's not till a year later that they're in my office being like, man, everything is just downhill. I don't know what to do. Help me. And I'm like, well, let's go back to your postpartum recovery. And I'm like, okay, that's where maybe we could have been better with our education or better with our recovery. So it's not, you might say, I ran down the street to chase my toddler and I felt great. I'm good. And I'm like, well, that is great that you feel good, but trust, you're probably not.
Yeah. And I just really feel like the lay person doesn't know these things. We don't know. And so I'm really glad we got to catch up again and chat about this and hopefully get them to know about it. So they can plan and prepare for that as well.
Exactly.
Definitely.
And I agree with you, Shannon. If you're not getting sleep, if you're not eating well for you, like those are the things that Wendy McCallum and I talked about in our Taking Care of You episode, which was probably a very popular episode last season, where she talked about these pillars of health. And that if one of these pillars, which is for her, their nutrition, exercise or movement, sleep, and stress management, if there's a crack in one of those pillars, then all those other things that are standing on top of it are going to put too much weight on it, and then those will start to crack and crumble. So you got to look at those pillars, movement being one, sleep being one, and to me, that stress management, there's a piece of that I think is really important. That's connection, and thinking about the mental health side of things, and keeping people connected, which is why, since we're talking about the postpartum period, I'll mention that I'm going to be starting a Facebook group, a free Facebook group. It's going to be called the Halifax Perinatal Support Network, where it's just where women in their pregnancy and postpartum, they can come and get information, get support, get connected to other supports if they're not finding what they're looking for. Finding out ways that, like, it's not just, I mean, we love our doctors, we love our nurses, we love all of those people in our healthcare team, but this conversation and conversations like this just always remind me of there's more to it than that. And so I want to be able to feel like everyone can get their support that they need with this huge shift and change in their lives. And then if they're not finding the resources that they're looking for, there are out there. We just need to help them and navigate that. So I think there's definitely more of a need for this postpartum support so that women can feel empowered to go and take care of themselves in those other ways.
Yeah,
a great
that's amazing.
Point. Yeah.
And you know what, just I wanted to make 2 points on the self-care bucket and nutrition bucket, in that, like, I know I'm a social person and I like to see people. So after those first, 2 weeks where I got over kind of the craziness, I have been making sure, most days I try and have like one social outing a day, or one social thing a day, whether that's going for a walk with someone, or maybe I even count a doctor's appointment as a social outing because I'm actually seeing people. So like, I know that that's been helpful for me because I'm a little bit extroverted now, and that might not be for everyone, but on the nutrition side of things, I did prep more freezer foods this time around. And also I had family, like I asked family to actually make me some freezer food too. I was like, I'm not going to be afraid, because I know how important nutrition is in this postpartum period when you don't really have a lot of time. My husband luckily loves to cook, and he cooked a lot our first baby in those first few weeks, but I knew this time he wasn't going to have the time. And even like, friends asking what to get me, like we had enough clothes, I'd rather like an Uber Eats gift card or make a meal. Like, so don't be afraid to ask for those things, because having the proper nutrition, even if you're still not like 100% doing your nutrition great in those first number of weeks, that's fine. But like having some nutrient dense foods can help you so immensely that I think we underestimate that a lot with our mood and our energy. Yeah. And
I mean, we could even just say like, just eating well for you. I'm certainly not asking people to eat like, all the fruits and vegetables and nothing else, but it's just like, just eating, period. Sometimes we can forget to eat. I mean, with a newborn and a toddler, sometimes it's 10, 11 o'clock and it's like, oh, I finally get a time to grab something. So you got to think about keeping your energy up, staying nutritious if you can, when you can.
But you're right. Eating, period. And just having like a few meals a day, like, is important. And you've been asking for help, and that's awesome. And I think that, again, that comes along with being around the block, having done this before and knowing where those challenges might lie, maybe feeling a little less, not shy, but just, we tend to not want to ask for help. That's just kind of how it goes. And we think that, no, I had a baby and I'm doing fine. I got this. But again, I think that's another reason why this group, I hope is going to be helpful, is not everybody knows how to ask for help. Not everybody knows they need or should ask for help. So I want help to just be there and for them to see that these are some ways that you can get support
that it's
I
there.
love
That's
it.
such a great point, because honestly, even as a practitioner, I even asked you at 6 weeks. Well, I asked you earlier, but at the 6 week appointment, when I see someone, I always ask, how's your mental health? And do you know how many times moms say to me, you're the first person to have asked me that? And now they're 6 weeks, like that's a month and a half. That's a long time dealing, like having trouble with your mental health. And I'm the first person that's asked it and has provided them like some sort of resource, or someone even just like open the door for it, where I've written to OBs being like, hey, you need to get in contact with this person and, you know, bring them into the clinic. Like, this isn't normal. But it's really sad how often that has happened, and someone's just waiting for you to open the door. So I think having that support network where that door is just constantly open, there's other people sharing their stories before even just that 6 week appointment, would be so helpful for so many people.
I was actually really impressed when you asked me that. And I meant to tell you that like, I love that you asked that question, because I wasn't expecting it. And it's probably not something that all pelvic floor physios ask. Right. Yeah. And it was like, especially if I were struggling more, I would have probably been like, oh my God. Like,
and I've had postpartum like checkups be full on just talking. Just literally be like, okay, what are we going to do? What are our steps? When am I going to follow up with you next? When am I going to talk to you? Like, I've given people literally my personal phone number to be like, yo, if this is not going well, I want you to text me. Like, I'd much rather that. And I know that's like, the college is probably going to come after me one day for that. I don't know, whatever. But like,
I think you said that in the first episode too. College is coming after
one day someone's going to put Maria on the chopping block. But you know what? At least I'd rather that than someone not have the support, or someone they can just ask questions to, or just need, you know, even just be like, hey, I'm not well, and be able to guide them. Like,
I'm literally the same way, Maria, because it doesn't even feel like it shouldn't fall on you, but you feel that responsibility sort of, and you feel like, I just want this person to have help. And I'm in the same boat. I would probably, college would come after me too.
Yeah. Whatever. See you soon at my hearing.
We'll create a new college where these things are allowed. No, but it's about supporting women in particular, people having babies. You two do it so well with the pelvico and that rehabilitation, the exercise. I love the resources and the connection that you bring to your social media and to your followers, because it is really important. And you were mentioning, Shannon, being an extrovert, and you crave that. You want to get out. And as an introvert, I might not feel the same way about that, but I'll tell you, I learned this the hard way, I still need that social connection too. And I think it's harder for the introverts to go out and get it, or to even know and realize that they need it. The first time, the first time the pandemic locked us down, I was kind of actually on cloud nine a little bit. I was like, finally, we get to just, hey, I mean, I wasn't happy about a pandemic or anything, but I was able to look on the bright side. I was able to see like, oh, I get some more family time, and we don't have to rush out to do all the things. And this is actually like, I'm doing okay with this. Totally. But then as it went on, and the second lockdown, it got a lot harder, and it surprised me. And I really kind of had to do some inner work and realize that like, yeah, I'm an introvert. Yeah, I like to hang out at home. Yeah, but that's not, we all need connection. We all need more of that. And it's only going to be more beneficial whether you're in a unfortunate mental health state or not. It's always going to help. Yeah.
No, that's so true. And, you know, just recognizing what stage you're at and like who you are and what your needs are just so important.
Thank you so much, ladies. I really enjoy our conversations as always. And, you know, maybe we'll have you back, because we're talking about other things in the pelvic floor now. Now we're doing bathroom etiquette and other things.
There's so much to cover.
Yeah.
Same. I think there's no TMI where I come from. So I think this is why I love these conversations. But anyway, thank you so much. You offer so much to everyone. And I'm really happy you're able to share that with us today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. That was a lot of fun.
Looking for more? Check out birthbabysleep.ca, where you'll find prenatal classes, postpartum and new baby resources, and sleep support during the childhood years. You'll also find me on Facebook and Instagram at birthbabysleep. It would be awesome if you followed us wherever you listen to podcasts, and if you can, leave a review or a rating, which goes a long way for helping others to find us. That's all for now. I'm Ashley Cooley, and we'll see you back here next time.